Rankin and Bass was an American production company that operated from 1960 to 1987. Throughout the 1960s and 70s in particular, Rankin and Bass were two of the most popular names in animation, famous for their Christmas-themed television specials such as Rudolph the Red-Nosed Reindeer, Frosty the Snowman, and The Year Without a Santa Claus. These specials would run in syndication for decades, introducing the magic and the artistry of Rankin and Bass to millions of new viewers. Unfortunately, the Christmas specials tend to overshadow the company's other work. One Rankin and Bass production you may not be aware of is 1967's Mad Monster Party. Or Mad Monster Party? When Rudolph the Red-Nosed Reindeer first premiered on December 6, 1964, it was a massive success, and people took notice. One person who took notice was Joseph E. Levine, film distributor, financier, and producer. Levine had been responsible for distributing Godzilla, King of the Monsters. Levine was convinced that Rankin and Bass, at that point called Videocraft International, had the potential to make films at the level of Walt Disney Studios, and signed a deal with them to create a trio of theatrically released feature-length films. The first would be a live-action stop-motion hybrid film called The Daydreamer, which Levine hoped would be the Rankin and Bass version of Mary Poppins. The second film would be made with traditional 2D animation and would be called The Wacky World of Mother Goose. The third film would be animated entirely in stop motion, or as Rankin and Bass had dubbed it, Animagic. At the time, classic movie monsters were experiencing a resurgence in popularity, fueled by companies like Aurora Plastics with their hugely popular Universal Monsters line of model kits, and monster movie fans like Forrest J. Ackerman and James Warren, editor and publisher of the famous Monsters of Filmland magazine. There was also a taste for more humorous depictions of the classic monsters, such as in the popular 1964 television series The Munsters. With all these things in mind, it was decided that the third film would revolve around a sort of monster convention. The film would be written by frequent Rankin and Bass collaborator Len Koropkin, along with Mad Magazine writer and editor Harvey Kurtzman. Kurtzman's involvement was likely the source of the word mad in the title. Kurtzman's contributions to the script would largely consist of dialogue and gags. Kurtzman would often make use of what was called chicken fat humor, essentially a technique of piling on small jokes that would enhance a comedic work without drawing too much attention to themselves, similar to the use of chicken fat in, for example, a matzo ball soup. Koropkin would handle the bulk of the scriptwriting duties. It's long been rumored that the aforementioned Forrest J. Ackerman also had a hand in the script, but there's no evidence to back that up. And according to official Rankin and Bass historian Rick Goldschmidt, Koropkin said that he'd never even heard of Ackerman at the time. While the film's direction was credited to Jules Bass, in reality, the actual directing was done by Japanese animators, with the lead animator being Tadahito Mochinaga. This was standard practice for Rankin and Bass. The celebrated comic book artist Jack Davis would design the characters. Davis had been known for his work on both EC horror comics and his celebrity caricatures in Mad Magazine. Because Rankin and Bass did not have the rights to the classic Universal versions of the monsters, Davis would create his own renditions of the characters, which would caricature just enough of the Universal designs, while also being different enough to not get sued. These designs are incredible, and particular standouts include Count Dracula and the Wolfman. I love the way that the Wolfman, referred to here as the Werewolf, is dressed in Romani garb, a reference to Bela Lugosi's character in the original Wolfman movie. In the case of Dr. Frankenstein, now named Baron Boris von Frankenstein, his design would be based on the look of the original Frankenstein actor Boris Karloff, who would also voice the character. Popular comedian Phyllis Diller would be cast as the Bride of Frankenstein, referred to here as the monster's mate. Frankenstein's monster would be called Fang, as a nod to Diller's stand-up routine in which she would use the moniker to refer to her husband. While the casting of celebrities in animated children's films is commonplace today, back then it was unheard of. Rankin and Bass essentially pioneered the concept. New Zealand-born Grammy Award-winning Canadian singer Gail Garnett would voice the character of Francesca and also provide her singing talents. The rest of the male voices in the film, literally every single male character that isn't Baron Frankenstein, was voiced by Alan Swift. Swift does an impressive job in the film considering how many characters he handles, including the hero, a normal human guy named Felix Flanken. Swift's various voices are based on celebrities, and Felix is very clearly based on Jimmy Stewart. The character's name, Flanken, is a traditional Yiddish name for a cut of thin beef short ribs. Rankin and Bass regulars Don Duga and Paul Coker would create the storyboards for the film. As with many of Rankin and Bass's most popular works, it was decided that the film would be a musical, with the music composed by Maury Laws and the lyrics written by Jules Bass. The score for the film is very jazzy, and the main theme in particular is influenced by the theme for the James Bond film Goldfinger. The puppets used in the film were, for the most part, traditional stop-motion figures, which contained wire armatures that allowed the puppets to be posed in various positions. But unlike traditional stop-motion, Animagic employed a version of what is sometimes called replacement animation, where various interchangeable prefabricated pieces are switched in and out to create the stop-motion footage. Each puppet, which averaged about 8 inches tall and would cost roughly $5,000, had numerous facial pieces to allow for a wide range of expression. Mad Monster Party follows the Baron Boris von Frankenstein. The Baron has already achieved mastery over the secret of creation, and now he has achieved mastery over destruction, too. Having achieved more than pretty much anyone else in the history of science, Baron Frankenstein sends out invitations to all of his monster friends so that he can announce his retirement. He also invites his nephew, candy shop clerk and normal human, Felix Flanken, so the Baron can share all of his secrets with him and appoint Felix his successor. When the Baron tells Francesca about this, she's secretly furious and plans, along with Dracula, to take Felix out. Meanwhile, the Baron is hoping that an unseen character, referred to only as It, will not show up. Felix arrives on the island and manages to evade the monster's attacks through sheer dumb luck. Later, the Baron tells Felix that he wants his nephew to succeed him as the head of the Worldwide Organization of Monsters, but Felix doesn't think he has the stomach for the job and says he'd like to think it over. Francesca is then betrayed by Dracula, who teams up with Fang and the mate, but she escapes and runs into Felix, and after he slaps her in the face, she falls in love with him. It was the 1960s, everybody. What can I say? The rest of the monsters then team up and decide to hunt down Felix and Francesca, which is funny because they're basically an angry mob. When the monsters attack Felix, he pulls out a vial of liquid candy, which the monsters mistake for the Baron's formula. Felix suddenly believes that he has the upper hand and tries to intimidate the monsters, but doesn't realize that a much larger problem is swimming up behind him. It has finally arrived. But who could It be? Who else but the king himself, the original stop-motion movie monster, King Kong. Although again, they just call him It for legal reasons, but take a look at him. That's King Kong. This is a particularly nice touch considering the original King Kong's importance in the history of stop-motion animation. Kong grabs Francesca and some of the other monsters, but Baron Frankenstein and his zombie butlers fire on Kong from fighter planes. This is actually set up earlier in the movie. Felix then rescues Francesca as the Baron uses his formula to destroy all of the monsters, including himself. Felix tells Francesca that they'll get married and have tiny Flankens, but Francesca drops a bomb on Felix, revealing that she can't have children. Wow, this just got serious. She can't have children because she's not an actual human woman. She's a robot invented by Baron Frankenstein. Felix reassures Francesca, telling her that none of us are perfect. He then glitches out and keeps repeating the word perfect, revealing that Felix was also a robot the entire time. And this was 15 years before Blade Runner. Eat that, Ridley Scott, you hack. In all honesty, this reveal at the end actually does make a lot of sense, and might actually explain Felix's dumb luck against the monsters. Maybe those were some sort of safety protocols kicking in. It might also explain how Felix slapping Francesca could suddenly change her from hating him to loving him, like a machine that needed a good whack. Of course, you might ask how Felix can be a robot when the Baron specifically says that Felix is his sister's son. But frankly, it doesn't really matter. Maybe he made Felix for his sister because she couldn't have kids either. Regardless, I think it's a pretty good twist, and in all seriousness, it even kind of recontextualizes the story, since Felix is actually one of the monsters in a sense. Unfortunately, the first two films in Rankin and Bass and Joseph Levine's three-picture deal had not been very successful at the box office. As a consequence, Mad Monster Party would not receive a wide release, but would instead be sent out to screen in Saturday afternoon children's matinees in 1967, 1968, and 1969. Critical reception for the film was mostly positive. Howard Thompson started his 1969 New York Times review of the film with, "Most of the so-called kiddie movies, unloaded on weekends at neighborhood theaters, are absurdly awful. But Mad Monster Party, which Avco Embassy is showing today and tomorrow at matinees only, is another matter entirely." The Syracuse Herald-Journal's Joan E. Vadaboncourt wrote, "Corralling all the screen's top monsters and adding Phyllis Diller as a creation of Frankenstein provides a good basis for a children's film. But putting it in animation and playing it for laughs were the sparks that made Mad Monster Party a winner." Unfortunately, a winner is not how Rankin and Bass saw the film, and Mad Monster Party would end up being the final theatrically released Rankin and Bass film to be animated with stop motion. In 1972, Rankin and Bass would produce a 2D animated television special called Mad, Mad, Mad Monsters, which used many of the characters from Mad Monster Party. Alan Swift would reprise a number of his voices from the film, while Bob McFadden would take over the role of Baron Boris von Frankenstein from Boris Karloff, who had passed away in 1969. In many ways, Mad Monster Party represents what could have been. Had the three Rankin and Bass Levine films been successful, the company might have achieved Joseph Levine's expectations of something approximating a Disney film. It's impossible to ever know. One thing we can say is that Rankin and Bass would end up influencing Disney films. Toy Story writer Andrew Stanton would say of the company, "Rankin and Bass was very much in the Schoolhouse Rock category of our influences." Director Tim Burton had cited Rankin and Bass and Mad Monster Party in particular as an influence, and this can be seen in films like The Nightmare Before Christmas and Frankenweenie. Some people have theorized that Jim Henson's Count character was influenced by Jack Davis's design of Count Dracula, although that's not clear. The movie Hotel Transylvania might not even exist without Mad Monster Party. Enjoying his experience on the film, Boris Karloff would go on to voice the title character in The Grinch Who Stole Christmas, which, due to delays, would end up being released first. For my part, I love Mad Monster Party. The pacing may be a little slow, and the jokes may be corny, but I just find the film so entertaining, so charming, that I can overlook minor flaws. In this day and age, when special effects have become an almost totally digital enterprise, watching a film like this that you know, with the exception of optical effects, was made entirely by hand is an absolutely mandatory experience for any film or animation fan. And frankly, I could watch this movie over and over. If you're going to watch Mad Monster Party, you may like to know that there are multiple versions of the film with different aspect ratios. Like Mickey's Christmas Carol, the film was animated open matte, resulting in a 1:8:5:1 version and a 1:3:3:1 version. I recommend you pick up the Umbrella Blu-ray release of the film, which not only contains both versions, but also has a beautiful restoration. I want to note also that most of the information in this video came from the aforementioned official Rankin and Bass historian, Rick Goldschmidt. This guy is the be-all end-all of Rankin and Bass experts, and he's all over this Blu-ray. Goldschmidt has also written several books on Rankin and Bass, which you can find on eBay. So whether it be October or April, sit back, relax, and enjoy a wonderful piece of stop-motion animation.
If I must say so myself, you are a masterpiece.